Today's lesson is Irresistible Gelato. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
Oh, it's in the middle of the hot summer. It's in July now, and of course, it's very hot outside, and sometimes we're looking for ways to cool off. The way I like to cool off, of course, is to go swimming in a swimming pool, but some people might eat something cold, like ice cream or gelato. Is that how you keep yourself cool, Kiki?
Yes, and in Taiwan during the summers, I love having mango shaved ice.
That is very tasty indeed, although it can have lots of calories there. But gelato, of course, is another option that you might consider. Gelato is similar to ice cream, but there are some important differences, which we will talk about in today's lesson. So let's not delay any further. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll come back to talk about it.
Irresistible gelato. When you're feeling hot and sweaty from the brutal summer sun, it's tempting to cool off with some refreshing gelato. This delicious treat, which literally means frozen in Italian, is an international favorite with a long and noble history.
大家好，我们来看标题中的形容词 irresistible， 它的意思是不可抗拒的或是难以抵抗的。例如 The smell of Megan's handmade desserts is irresistible. Megan 手做甜点的香气令人无法抗拒。又或者说 The unbelievable price of this product is irresistible to customers. 这个产品令人不可置信的价格对消费者来说难以抗拒。下一个，来介绍形容词 brutal， 它的意思是严酷的、难以忍受的、残忍的或是野蛮的。例如The miners have to endure brutal conditions. 矿场工人必须忍受严酷的环境。又或者说 The police force took brutal action against the protesters as they started to riot. 在抗议者开始暴动时，警方采取严酷的手段镇压。再来看到形容词 tempting， 它的意思是诱人的或是吸引人的。例如 The desserts in the bakery were very tempting to those on a diet. 那间面包店里的甜点对于在减肥的人来说非常诱人。
So in the title here, we've got the word irresistible. That means you cannot resist it, even though you probably should, okay? So maybe gelato has a lot of sugar and you're on a diet or something like that and you know you shouldn't eat it, but oh, it's so irresistible. There are so many different flavors and it's so cold for the summer. I just really want to have one. It's just so irresistible. I can't resist.
You just can't stay away from it. So when you're feeling hot and sweaty from the brutal summer sun, it's tempting to cool off with some refreshing gelato. So during the summer, it's really hot outside. Sometimes in the classroom, it may be hot too, or in the office. So you become really sweaty. And to be sweaty is when you perspire. That's when all the yucky, sticky, salty liquid comes out from your body. You become really sweaty.
Exactly. It's a lot of perspiration because you're hot or because you're exercising. And yes, indeed, it's hot outside. So we get really sweaty from the brutal summer sun. If something's brutal, it's extreme and it causes us a lot of discomfort. It could also mean very, very violent. Maybe we've seen some disturbing movies where there was a brutal murder. Somebody was killed in a very violent way. And in this particular case, though, we're using the word brutal just to emphasize the fact that the hot summer sun is just very uncomfortable. It makes us really hot, and it could also give us a nasty sunburn, so be careful about that. And if you're feeling hot and sweaty under the hot summer sun, it's tempting to cool off with some refreshing gelato. So if something's tempting, that means you really would like that thing. It just sounds really, really good, but you're supposed to avoid it, maybe because this stuff is too sweet, or you already had some cake and pie earlier today, and you should really resist it. But of course, it's irresistible. You just can't help yourself.
And you want to cool off with some refreshing gelato. So usually in the summer, because it's so hot, everyone is so tempted to cool off. You want to make your body cold. You don't want to feel really hot. So you cool off by having ice cream or even a cold, icy drink. And that's how you try to find ways to make yourself feel colder. And usually you do this by eating or drinking something that's refreshing. So refreshing is to make yourself feel refreshed. So when you refresh something, you want to change the freshness. You want to renew your freshness. So you want to feel better. You want to feel new again. And something refreshing could be very light. For example, people like to eat cucumbers because they feel that's very refreshing.
Right. It also implies being cool on a hot summer day, so it might be refreshing to take a cold shower after you get home from school or work. And in this particular case, it would be refreshing to have some gelato or ice cream or a cold drink, you name it. Now, this delicious treat, which literally means frozen in Italian, is an international favorite with a long and noble history. So, yeah, this is what it means in Italian. The word gelato in Italian literally means frozen. If we're talking about something being literal, that means it's exactly what it means. It's not being figurative or metaphorical. It's actually literal, okay? It's actually frozen in Italian. That's what it means.
So an example would be, I am so cold that I'm literally shaking.
Exactly. Sometimes we say I'm shaking in a figurative sense. You're not really shaking, but you use it for emphasis. But if you're really shaking, then you can say it literally. I'm literally shaking now because I'm so cold or because I'm so nervous or whatever. And yes, indeed, that's what gelato means. In Italiano, it means frozen, and it's become an international favorite. And it has a long and noble history. So, of course, you can get gelato in all parts of the world. And if we talk about something being noble, well, that means it has fine qualities, it has high moral principles, and, of course, gelato is well respected around the world. People really love this Italian dessert. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's listen now to the second part.
Gelato was invented in Italy in the late 16th century by the artist Bernardo Buontalenti, who was commissioned by the wealthy and powerful Medici family to prepare a magnificent feast for the King of Spain. Buontalenti thus set about the task of creating an elaborate frozen dessert, which is known today as gelato. Not long after its invention, gelato was introduced in France by an Italian restaurant owner who opened a cafe in Paris. The cafe served miniature cups of gelato that became a huge success, and gelato soon spread to other parts of Europe and to North America. If you've tasted both gelato and ice cream before, you may have picked up on some differences between the two, a key one being that gelato has a smoother and denser texture than ice cream. This characteristic is due to gelato's lower cream and air content. Compared to ice cream, gelato is also stored at higher temperatures. These warmer temperatures make gelato more flavorful, since our tongues can taste flavors more easily when they're not numbed by the cold.
第二部分我们看到单字 feast， 它是名词，指的是宴席、盛宴或是飨宴。例如 We prepared a feast to celebrate the holiday. 我们准备一桌宴席来庆祝这个节日。下一个看到形容词 elaborate， 意思是精致的、精心制作的或是详尽的。例如 Mark handmade an elaborate cake for his girlfriend's birthday. Mark 亲手为他女友的生日做了一个精致的蛋糕。再来介绍名词 characteristic， 它的意思是特征、特色或是特点。例如 A significant characteristic of this breed of dog is its soft and white fur. 这种狗的其中一个明显特征是它们又软又白的毛。
Okay, the second part talks a little bit about the history of gelato. It was invented quite some time ago in Italy in the late 16th century or the late 1500s by the artist Bernardo Buontalenti, who was commissioned by the wealthy and powerful Medici family to prepare a magnificent feast for the King of Spain. So first of all, we've got this artist, Bernardo Buontalenti, and somebody contacted him and said, hey, we need you to prepare a really magnificent feast, a great banquet for the King of Spain. We need to impress him. We need to thank him for his efforts or whatever. And, of course, we'll pay you for that. So if somebody pays you to do something, we can say they have commissioned you to do that thing. They have hired you to do this thing, usually on a one-time basis.
So you can say, we commissioned the artist to make a portrait of our family.
Right. You pay them for a one-time job. And here, of course, he was contacted and they said, hey, Mr. Buontalenti, would you like to prepare a magnificent feast for the King of Spain? Of course I would. That's a great honor. A feast, of course, is a great meal that you provide for somebody. In Taiwan here, if you go to a wedding, that's usually a wedding banquet. A feast would be probably for kings and queens or people in power, not just for regular folks who get married in hotels or whatever. That would be a banquet. But here we've got a magnificent feast for the King of Spain, and Buontalenti thus set about the task of creating an elaborate frozen dessert, which is known today as gelato. So he probably prepared all the usual dishes for the King of Spain, but of course he probably had to come up with something new and exciting so the King of Spain would be impressed. And so he set about creating an elaborate frozen dessert. If you set about doing something, that means you start to do something, you make the preparations, and you carry the task out.
And he created an elaborate frozen dessert. So an elaborate dessert meant that this gelato, it was something new, it was very unique, and most importantly, it was of really high quality, and it took a lot of effort to create this thing. So when something is very elaborate, it takes a lot of time to go through the process of creation or the design. So you can sometimes describe something being elaborate when it's an item that is really magnificent, or you've seen that there's been a lot of intricate details put into something.
Yeah, that's the key there. If it is elaborate, it's got a lot of details and carefully arranged parts and things like that. The verb form of this is pronounced slightly differently. Elaborate. Elaborate and elaborate. That means to give someone details about something. Yes, I'd like to improve the economy. Well, how are you going to do that? Can you please elaborate? What exactly are you going to do? So he made this elaborate frozen dessert, and nowadays we know it as gelato. So not long after its invention, gelato was introduced in France by an Italian restaurant owner who opened a cafe in Paris. So all those Parisians were walking along the sidewalks and smoking cigarettes and meeting their friends in sidewalk cafes or whatever, looking at art and reading novels and things like that. And then they passed by this Italian restaurant and they saw this strange thing in the window. What's that? That looks kind of interesting. Let's go in and try that.
The cafe served miniature cups of gelato that became a huge success, and gelato soon spread to other parts of Europe and to North America. So they served these gelato in miniature cups. So it's a mini cup. It's a small cup. It's smaller than small. And that way people can have a taste of what gelato is. And also because we mentioned that gelato is it's an elaborate and intricate, exquisite dessert. So usually they don't serve it like in Taiwan. We have those 100 kwai ice cream cones that are really long, right?
All right, yeah.
Gelato, you don't eat gelato like that.
Nope. Gelato is served in miniature cups. Just like when you drink Chinese tea, oftentimes it is served in those miniature cups, those very small cups, so you can get the proper taste and flavor, which is actually quite tasty. In this particular case, yes, you eat gelato in small cups. And at least at that time, that was the case, and it became a huge success. The Parisians loved it, and gelato soon spread to other parts of Europe and to North America. So it began to become popular in Paris, and then it spread to other countries in Europe like Germany and the UK, Denmark, or whatever, and eventually over across the Atlantic to North America. Now, if you've tasted both gelato and ice cream before, you may have picked up on some differences between the two. A key one being that gelato has a smoother and denser texture than ice cream. That is true. It does seem smoother and it does seem denser or thicker.
Right. And I think with gelato, the flavor is also very potent and it's very strong. So it's a lot more flavorful. And I do think that the texture is a lot, if we talk about the molecules or feeling this ice cream, the gelato is definitely more packed up, right?
Yeah, how it feels on your tongue, the texture there. And again, if you've had both of these, you may have detected or sensed or picked up on those differences between the two. Gelato is smoother and denser. Ice cream has more cream in it. Well, this characteristic of being smoother and denser is due to gelato's lower cream and air content. A characteristic, of course, is the feature of something that distinguishes it from something else. Okay, so this is a characteristic of gelato that makes it different from ice cream.
And the content of something is how something is made up of. What is it made up of? So you can look at a soda, a can of Coke. What is in its content? What's inside of this Coke?
Indeed, what does it contain? And compared to ice cream, gelato is also stored at higher temperatures. So I guess they store ice cream at a lower temperature and gelato is stored at a higher temperature, although it's still kind of cold. And these warmer temperatures make gelato more flavorful since our tongues can taste flavors more easily when they're not numbed by the cold. Yes, ice cream is very cold. And of course, sometimes when we go to the hot pot restaurant and we've finished our meal and we want to have some ice cream and we take the ice cream scoop, sometimes it can be very difficult to get a scoop of ice cream because it's so darn cold. And then when you taste the ice cream, your tongue might get numbed by the cold, which means it just kind of gets sort of without feeling. So you can't really taste it as well. And that's why gelato is probably better than ice cream. Well, let's move on now to the third and final part. We'll listen to it first.
These days, gelato shops can be found almost everywhere. However, if you're on a quest for the world's best gelato, then you should probably head to Italy, the place where it all started. And if you were to ask the locals there about their favorite flavors, the majority would undoubtedly say pistachio, hazelnut, or chocolate, the Italian classics. But regardless of the specific flavors you choose, the wholesome goodness of gelato fosters affection, making those with a sweet tooth return again and again for more.
最后第三部分，我们看到副词 undoubtedly 指的是无疑的、毫无疑问的。举例来说 ，Tim is undoubtedly the smartest student in French class. Tim 毫无疑问是法文班上最聪明的学生。最后一个例子 ，The pancakes at this restaurant are undoubtedly the best that I have ever tasted. 这间餐厅的松饼毫无疑问的是我吃过最美味的。
Okay, now we've come to the present. These days, in modern times, gelato shops can be found almost everywhere, including all over Taiwan. However, if you're on a quest for the world's best gelato, then you should probably head to Italy, the place where it all started. So if you're on a quest for something, you really have this task that you want to complete. And yes, you like gelato, but you still want to taste the best gelato in the world. Well, you better go to Italy. Like if you want to taste the world's best espresso coffee, you should also go to Italy.
And if you were to ask the locals there about their favorite flavors, the majority would undoubtedly say pistachio, hazelnut, or chocolate, the Italian classics. So if something is undoubtedly something, it means there's no doubt about it. Everyone will agree on the same thing. There's no argument there.
Right, so you're going to ask them about their favorite flavors. Yeah, what's your favorite flavor of gelato? Do you like strawberry, mango, guava, or whatever? But they're going to say, no, we like pistachio, hazelnut, and chocolate. Those are Italian classics, and indeed, those flavors are readily available in Italy. But regardless of the specific flavors you choose, the wholesome goodness of gelato fosters affection, making those with a sweet tooth return again and again. So regardless of the specific flavors you choose, no matter what flavor you choose, it still has this wholesome goodness. It's wholesome. It's like really basic and it's very clean and it's not artificial. It feels so good on your tongue with that great texture and it fosters affection. To foster just means to bring something about.
Right. And I think just seeing the word wholesome and foster here, I think it's making people feel like when they have gelato, it really brings them a homey feeling and it takes them back to their childhood. So it's really wholesome. It makes them feel really good. And when you foster something, sometimes it's when you're adopting a certain type of emotion or you're fostering a certain type of thinking.
Exactly. This reminds me when I first came to Taiwan many years ago, I read in the tourist literature and it said Taiwan is the only place in the world that preserves and fosters traditional Chinese culture. I don't think they make that claim anymore, but they did many years ago. And yes, indeed, gelato can foster affection. You can really like it. And if you have a sweet tooth, if you like to eat sweet foods, then you'll return again and again for more gelato. I think there are stores in such places that have gelato stands where you can eat all the gelato you want.
Right, and that comes to the end of today's explanation. Let's head over and listen to our Chinese teacher, Henny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要练习文意选填的题型。那我们先快速浏览题目的10个选项。 A. Majority 是名词，表示大多数、大部分。 B. Miniature 它是名词，表示微型化、微型复制品，它也可以当形容词来形容微型的、小型的。 C. Flavorful 它是形容味道丰富的、极具风味的。 D. Favorite 当名词可以指特别喜爱的人或事物，也可以当形容词表达最喜爱的。 E. Picked up on 我们用 pick up on 可以表达注意到、了解到，那这边使用 picked 可能是过去式或过去分词。再来 F commissioned commission 这个动词可以表达委托、委任或是任命，那么 commissioned 可能是过去式或过去分词，如果是过去分词可以当形容词去描述受委托的。G. set about 表示着手开始做，那注意 set 它的三态同形。H. stored 那么 store 当动词可以表达储存或是储存， stored 则可能是过去式或过去分词，如果是过去分词它可以当形容词来描述储存的或是储存的。再来看到 I. specific 它可以形容是特定的、确切的，这个单字其实还可以当名词表示特性或特效药。J. content 它是形容满意的、满足的，这个单字也可以当动词来表达使满意、满足。那另外 content 如果当名词是念作 content， 它可以表达含量、成分或是内容的意思。那看完选项我们就来做题目吧。第一题他说 This delicious treat is an international 空格 with a long and noble history。 从句子结构判断，空格前面是and international， 然后空格后面是介系词片语 with a long and noble history。 我们可以判断空格里面要填入单数可数名词，那符合的选项有 A. majority， B. miniature， D. favorite， I. specific， 还有 J. content。 那根据句意呢，他说这款美味的甜点享有悠久且高贵的历史，是国际上空格，它应该就是要表达深受国际喜爱的美食 an international favorite， 所以最适合答案就选 D. favorite。第二题他说 Gelato was invented in Italy in the late 16th century by the artist Bernardo Buontalenti, who was 空格 by the wealthy and powerful Medici family to 那空格是出现在非限定用法的关系子句里面，用来对前方的艺术家 Bernardo Buontalenti 来做补充说明，说明他受到富有且有权势的麦地奇家族怎么样怎么样。那我们从关系代名词 who还有 be 动词 was， 还有后方的这个 by the wealthy and powerful Medici family 来判断说这边应该是用被动语态，所以要填入及物的动词或者是片语动词的过去分词。好，那符合的选项有 E. picked up on， F. commissioned， 或者是 H stored。不过呢 pick up on 和 store 的受词必须是事物，所以这题的答案我们要选 F commissioned， 表示说那位艺术家受到该家族委托。再看到第3题，他说 Buontalenti does Conga the task of creating an elaborate frozen dessert。 空格前面是主词 Buontalenti 还有副词 does， 那么后面呢是当受词用的 the task of creating an elaborate frozen dessert。 所以我们这个空格里面要填入有及物用法的动词或片语动词，而且时态必须是过去式。符合的选项有一picked up on 或者是 G set about 或者是 H stored。 从语义上来看，最适合应该是 G set about， 去表达说着手进行来制作一款精致冰冻甜品的任务。第4题他说 The cafe served空格 cups of gelato that became a huge success。 空格前面是主词 the cafe 还有动词 served， 后面是受词 cups of gelato。 从句子结构判断，这个空格应该填入可以用来修饰名词的形容词或者是分词。符合的选项有 B miniature， C flavorful， H stored，I specific， 还有 J content。 那根据句意呢，他说这间咖啡馆供应什么杯的意式冰淇淋相当成功，那最适合答案应该会是 B， 我们用 miniature cups 来表达迷你杯的意思。好，第5题 If you've tasted both gelato and ice cream before, you may have Conga some differences between the two。如果你以前尝过意式冰淇淋和冰淇淋，你可能以空格两者之间的一些差异。题目空格前面是 may have， 后面是 some differences between the two。 我们从句子结构判断，这个空格里面要填入及物用法的动词或片语动词它的过去分词。那符合的选项有一 picked up on 或者是 H stored。 从语义上来看，正确答案应该要选这个一 picked up on， 去表达说你可能已经注意到两者之间的一些差异了。第6题他说 This characteristic is due to gelato's lower cream and air 空格。句子里面的 this characteristic 是主词， is 是动词，后面接 due to 点点点来当主词补语。所以我们从句子结构就可以判断，空格是位于 due to 的点点点的这个介系词片语当中。而且我们看到空格前面呢是有连接词 and， 所以空格应该要填入跟 cream 对等的名词。符合的选项有 A majority， I specific 和 J content。 根据句意呢，它应该是要表达意式冰淇淋的奶油和空气含量较低，那最适合答案应该要填入 J content 去表达含量成分。第7题 Compared to ice cream, gelato is also 空格 at higher temperatures。 空格前面有主词 gelato 还有 be 动词 is， 那么后面是介系词片语 at higher temperatures。 我们推测空格里面可能是要填入形容词或分词来做修饰用，也有可能是要填入过去分词来构成被动语态。符合的选项有 C flavorful， H stored 和 I specific。 可是从句意来看，他说与冰淇淋相比，意式冰淇淋也空格在较高的温度中，这边应该只有选项 H stored 符合语义来表达说储存在较高的温度当中。好，我们看到第8题，他说 These warmer temperatures make gelato more 空格 since our tongues can taste flavors more easily when they're not numbed by the cold。从空格前方这个 make gelato more 点点点，就是表达说让意式冰淇淋风味更怎么样。那我们可以推断空格里面要填入形容词。符合选项有 C flavorful 和 I specific。 那因为句子后半句有提到说，因为我们舌头没有被低温麻痹时更容易尝到口感，所以可以推测前半句是要表达较温暖的温度让意式冰淇淋更有风味，味道更佳。那我们正确答案要选 C flavorful。再来看到第9题 And if you were to ask the locals there about their favorite flavors, the 空格 would undoubtedly say 点点点。我们从句子结构判断，空格和前面的 the 是主要子句的主词，所以呢，我们要填入名词。剩下的选项有 A majority 和 I specific。那么 majority 可以作为集合名词，我们常常用 the majority 去表达大多数人，那放在这里也是符合句意的，所以我们答案就是选 A majority。再看到第10题，他说 But regardless of the 空格 flavors you choose, the wholesome goodness of gelato 点点点点，那空格前面是定冠词 the， 后面是名词 flavors。从句子结构来看，空格要填入形容词，我们最后就只剩下 I specific， 可以用来修饰 flavors 去表达特定口味，这也符合句意，所以呢是正解。好啦，那以上就是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Brutal. The kangaroo gave a brutal kick to the surprised tourist. Tempting. The smell of the cake was so tempting that Marlin decided to break his diet. Noble. The noble knight defended his kingdom with honor. Feast. The family prepared a delicious feast for their holiday dinner. Elaborate. The fashion designer created an elaborate dress featuring silk, lace, and pearls. Characteristic. One characteristic of successful business people is their ability to take reasonable risks. Undoubtedly. The interview made the manager think that Vera was undoubtedly the best person for the job. Foster. The government put into effect several policies to foster economic growth.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Kiki.
See you next time.